All right, let's jump right in. We usually think of exercise as being for the body, right? For our muscles, for our heart. But what if it could actually be a tool to rebuild the brain? Today, we're tackling a really fascinating question. Can exercise actually help rewire the brain after a stroke?
And this is a huge deal. Stroke is a global heavyweight. It's one of the top causes of both death and long-term disability on the planet. We are talking about millions of people whose lives are completely changed every single year. So the stakes are incredibly high.
So, we all want to help people recover. But how? That's the big mystery. We know exercise is good for us, sure, but could it be the key to unlocking the brain's own incredible healing powers? Well, the science in humans has been, frankly, a bit murky, even questionable. So, let's dig in and see what the evidence really tells us.
Now, before we even get to exercise, we got to understand the basic challenge here. When a stroke happens, it damages brain tissue. It's like a bomb goes off in the brain's intricate communication network. The whole path to recovery hinges on the brain's amazing ability to adapt.
And that ability has a name you've probably heard of: neuroplasticity. The best way to think about it is like this. If a stroke creates a massive roadblock on a major highway in the brain, neuroplasticity is the process of building new side streets and detours to get all that information traffic flowing again. It is the biological engine of recovery.
So what's the road crew for building these new neural highways? Well, one of the most important players is a protein called BDNF. The easiest way to think about BDNF is like fertilizer for your brain. It literally helps brain cells grow, survive, and forge those brand new connections that are so critical for getting better.
Which brings us right back to our central question. Could something as simple as getting on a treadmill be the catalyst? Could it boost neuroplasticity and flood the brain with that vital fertilizer, BDNF? And this is exactly where things get tricky. In animal studies, the link is super strong. You get a mouse running on a wheel, and you can measure all sorts of positive changes that help it recover. But with us humans, it's just not that simple. Things like our age, our genetics, the type of stroke we had, it all complicates the picture. And that's why a big review like this is so important. It helps us sort through the noise. So, let's put on our detective hats and decode that evidence. The researchers behind our source material dug through a ton of studies to figure out what's really going on, and they looked at it from 3 different angles. So here's their 3-pronged attack. First, they looked directly at the brain itself, using things like MRI scans to see which areas were lighting up. Second, they looked at the blood, hunting for those chemical messengers, that brain fertilizer like BDNF. And third, they looked at what really matters most: real-world results. Could people actually move better? Could they learn new things? Okay, so when they looked at the brain scans, the results were, well, divergent but promising is how they put it. It wasn't a slam dunk every time, but there was a clear signal that, yep, aerobic exercise can change the brain's wiring. But as they sifted through the data, a really important clue started to emerge about what kind of exercise makes the biggest difference. And here it is. This is the big clue. The review found that just, light, gentle exercise often didn't move the needle much. But, as this quote says, it was the rehab programs with moderate to high-intensity exercise that really seemed to trigger those changes in the brain. So it's not just about moving, it's about the intensity. That seems to be a secret ingredient.
Brain scans are one thing, right? But does any of this actually translate into helping someone in their daily life? Well, that brings us to the evidence on real-world recovery. And there was one study that found something absolutely incredible.
This one study from a team led by Plowman had a genius design. They took a bunch of stroke survivors and tested a fascinating idea. What if exercise isn't the main event, but more like the warm-up act for the brain?
And wow, just look at these results. Check out that first bar. The group that did intense aerobic exercise right before their cognitive training saw their problem-solving ability jump by 47%. Now compare that. The group that did a less intense activity before the same training, only a 20% improvement. And the group that did the aerobics but then just played simple games, a tiny 7%. The takeaway here is huge. The intense exercise seemed to prime the brain, making it way more ready to learn.
Okay, this brings us to that third piece of the puzzle. If exercise is priming the brain, can we actually see the proof in the blood? Did the studies find a spike in those key growth factors like BDNF after exercise?
Well, when they looked at the blood work, the picture got messy again. You can see it right here in this table. The results are kind of all over the map. One study finds a big jump in BDNF, another finds nothing.
The researchers think things like how old people were or how severe their stroke was could be the reason for the different results, but a pattern did start to show up. The higher intensity exercise was, again, more likely to cause a significant increase.
So after digging through brain scans, real-world function, and all those chemical messengers, what's the verdict? What does all of this science, when you put it together, actually suggest? The single biggest, clearest conclusion from this entire review is this. The brain's ability to rewire itself, that neuroplasticity, seems to kick into high gear when the exercise is done at a moderate to high intensity. It's not just about moving, it is about challenging the body.
So let's just boil this all down into 3 simple takeaways. Number 1, intensity is king. Pushing yourself seems to be the trigger for real change. Number 2, combination is powerful. Exercise isn't just exercise. It can be a primer for other therapies, making them work even better. And number 3, it's still complicated. This isn't a magic bullet, and how well it works can depend on the individual.
So what does this all mean for the future? For the actual path to recovery for millions of people? Because this isn't just about cool science. It has profound implications for how we could totally redesign rehabilitation. This right here is the real game changer. This research basically reframes exercise. It's not just for your heart anymore. It's a direct therapy for your brain. It has the power to, as the source says, potentiate the neuroplasticity process. And for survivors who are maybe months or even years post-stroke, it offers a way to help reopen the window of recovery, creating new chances for the brain to heal and adapt.
And that really leaves us with this final powerful thought. While clinical therapy is always going to be vital, this evidence is telling us that a huge part of the answer might be found outside of the hospital. It really makes you wonder, is the future of stroke recovery found not just in the clinic, but maybe in the gym?